In the great state of Utah that loves its sports, there's no greater sporting event than BYU versus Utah on the gridiron, and we are breaking it down here today on this crossover episode in a matchup that has maybe the greatest stakes in this historic rivalry. I'm your BYU insider for KSLSports.com, Mitch Harper, host of the Cougar Tracks podcast, and joining me, host of Utah Blockcast, your Utah insider for KSL Sports, Steve Bartle. Steve, in the words of Gus Johnson, googly moogly, we're about to have ourselves a week.
Yeah, we are. I think we've already gotten off to a great start this week with the rivalry. It's been a lot of fun. Having this game last year with the conference implications and now amplified, given the setting, giving the stage, top 25 matchup, big noon kickoff. This is a big one, Mitch. I'm excited for this one.
BYU and Utah can't agree on anything. Utah says the series started in 1896. BYU says the series started in 1922. There's never agreement, and hopefully there's no agreement on this show today as we break down this matchup between the Cougs and the Utes. And you're right, Steve. This series, I think people were really frustrated that the series went to this October 18th date. When the schedule was released back in February, people said, what? BYU and Utah in October? Are you kidding me? This needs to be at the final week of the season. Maybe it was a stroke of genius by Brett Yormark, who's always saying it's aspirational. We got to protect our IP. Maybe he was so aspirational in his vision of BYU and Utah that this game has maybe greater stakes than ever because 6-0 BYU, 5-1 Utah. First time you got a undefeated team and a one-loss team in this rivalry since 2008, and then you add a network television stage, Big 12 conference implications on the line. I think this is the greatest stakes ever in the history of this series.
Pretty big, without a doubt. It's interesting, obviously, with Big Noon Kickoff coming, Fox, all of that. It's also been interesting, Pat McAfee saying he wishes College Game Day would have been here. That's how big this game is and how much
shirtless Pat. We needed that in Provo. People would have been uncomfortable in Provo about that one.
It's significant. And obviously with the stakes, I think what we've learned is Utah, BYU are going to be two teams that are going to be contending for the Big 12 title on a pretty regular basis. And to have this game at this point of the season, I think is fantastic. I understand wanting it to be the last game of the season. That's how we grew up with this game. But with the Big 12 title game, it just means having it here, I think, has been really valuable for both programs because of what's to come down the road with both teams having those title aspirations. I think this is a great setting, a great matchup, and I think it's both teams outside of Utah dropping, laying an egg against Texas Tech. Both teams have taken care of business, a top 25 matchup. You could argue Utah is underrated given the fact that their only loss is to number 7 Texas Tech. This is going to be a really fun matchup on Saturday.
These are two programs that are pretty much carbon copies of each other. You go back to 2016, the first year of Kalani Sitake as the head coach. Since that time, BYU 78-43 since 2016. Utah 77-41. These teams are very similar statistically this season. They're built with physicality as the foundation of everything, and we heard that from the coaches this week in the press conferences, which, of course, Cougar fans were not very happy with Kyle Whittingham not addressing Bear Bachmeier. You were in that press conference room. Please tell us what was the mood of when Whittingham was asked about Bear, and he just straight up said, "I'm not talking about BYU guys." Basically,
yeah, it was interesting. In my head, it was the Joker meme, and here we go.
Circa 2008, The Dark Knight.
It was, I think a lot of people kind of felt the same way that. Oh, wow. He's not going to do it. He's not going to talk about BYU players. And I think really interesting for Kyle Whittingham because he knows anything he says or doesn't say now is going to be picked apart. It's going to be amplified by the BYU propaganda machine. And I'm fascinated to see where this leads this week.
Hold on. The propaganda machine. He even said Whittingham, when asked about Smith Snowden, it wasn't that serious that he was leaving. The propaganda machine. Hold the phone. Googly moogly. Crossover episode is off to a fire start. I'm about to put the highlight reel on. I'm about to show the hype video. I'm going to give the bulletin board material. Propaganda machine. You hear that, Kalani? Throw that into the locker room. Throw that into the locker room.
Anyways, yeah, what a great start. I think, again, just he's smart. He knows, he's hyper-aware that anything he says or doesn't say is going to be picked apart. And I thought it was a really interesting choice, to say the least, for Kyle Whittingham to make those comments and to avoid. And, I think part of it, it's unfortunate that the first question was about Bear Bachmeier. Could have been a very easy, he's a talented player, move on.
Yeah.
But there are some conversations around this rivalry, some players maybe that could have been asked about, that, it's a more delicate conversation around. Keanu Tanavasa is who I'm thinking of first and foremost. And I think nipping it in the bud and keeping the focus on his guys, I think avoided any sort of controversial take or anything that also could have been picked apart and amplified. And so I think that is, again, interesting choice to say the least. But, it adds some fuel to the fire.
On the flip side, Kalani Sitake, when asked about Devin Dampier, he was pretty glowing about Dampier, obviously, talking about his dual threat ability, and we've all seen that. It's going to be a big challenge for BYU to slow down a Utah offense that is far more efficient this year than last season, where the Utes basically were, you could describe it anemic, inept. They still had every chance to win that game. It was a 1-point game a season ago as BYU escaped with a 22-21 win. But I do think what was interesting with Kalani and also Whittingham too, and even Cougar fans gave me grief when I shared the video that you posted about Whittingham saying Kalani's an outstanding coach. I thought it was a cool quote just because, again, there is a strong relationship between those two, and I think there's a respect. Because I remember after the 2019 game when Whittingham spoke in the post-game press conference in Provo, and he said, Kalani's trying to get that thing going. And that was at the time when Kalani was on the hot seat. And now 6 years later, Kalani's really settled in and become the leader of BYU. And Whittingham acknowledged that and said he's an outstanding coach, and even addressed guys like Jay Hill and that whole staff, because it's crazy how much crossover is in. We do this crossover podcast today. The crossover between the two staffs. Jason Beck, OC, former BYU quarterback. Micah Simon. Since I've been here at KSL, he was playing at BYU. Now he's on the staff at Utah. And then, of course, Jay Hill, Chad Kahaha, Gary Anderson. We can go on and on.
Oh, yeah.
Justin Enna. So much crossover between these two programs. BYU and Utah, 6 o'clock kick on Saturday night. And it's going to have a huge setting with big noon kickoff in Provo. You're no stranger to Big Noon Kickoff.
No.
You got to see that this year already for the Utah-Texas Tech game. BYU fans experienced it last year with the BYU-Arizona game, but there's a new wrinkle this year with Big Noon Kickoff with Dave Portnoy, Stool Presidente, now on the Big Noon set. I think he's been an awesome addition, but what's kind of the vibe that's different with Big Noon now with Stool Presidente on the set?
It is definitely a different vibe, to say the least, with Stool Presidente. And look, like I get it. There's a long conversation to be had around Dave Portnoy and the Barstool folks there. But them being up there for Big Noon Kickoff, the Wake Up Barstool show, it was fantastic. It was fun. It's what just the spirit of college football, the rivalry, the banter, all of that sort of stuff. Like, that's what it was. And to have, Portnoy come to Salt Lake City for the very first time, Utah in general, and for him to see what Utah has to offer. It was really cool to follow along with him. He's talking about being in Salt Lake, being up at Park City, potentially buying a house up there, which,
I dang, I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah, he tweeted about it. Yeah. There's a tweet. You can find it. And, getting out to the pizza spots, the conversation in the lead up to the pizza reviews, the One Bite pizza reviews, I can't stop watching them. That's what got me hooked on Portnoy, which is a weird thing to say. But I got hooked on him because of the One Bite pizza. And, a little concerned about the pizza scene in Salt Lake City, but some strong scores for Salt Lake City pizza. Came away impressed. I think the big one, obviously, the pie. And I think everybody learned with Dave Portnoy is that they have the thin crust pizza.
I didn't know that either.
Exactly.
I've been eating lasagna on those pies for years, man.
I think everybody went to the menu to actually verify that they do have thin crust pizza. But it got a 6.9, a score not for the crowd here. But he went to the Villaggio. I don't think we've seen the video for that one drop just yet.
I don't think so.
But I've heard according to sources, I've heard that it scored well. So we'll see that one. There's another pizza spot that I've heard scored really well, and then the Pie Hole is another one. Slackwater got a solid score of 7.3. So Mitch, I'm curious, right? I was concerned about the pizza scene in Salt Lake City. I'm a little more worried about the pizza scene in Provo.
I won't lie. When this was announced, I was worried too because I'll admit, I live in Salt Lake area, so when I'm going to Provo, it's for work and then I'm heading back home, or it's 2 a.m. after a long game, and I'm like, is there anywhere to eat? And it's usually now for me, Raising Cane's is my go-to late night.
Love it.
Yes. But I will say there are some pizza places, as I was thinking about it, because over time, as a man who enjoys a good slice, some good food, I mean, there's no shame here. I love me some pizza. It's always good. Nico's Pizza, I'd recommend that in Provo. Had that this summer at the BYU football golf media event that Kalani hosts. Nico's Pizza is fairly new in Provo, but I think Dave Portnoy would like that one quite a bit. And then I think the one that's perfect for Portnoy is Lucy's New York Pizza in Orem. That's been around for years in Utah County. I think if there's one that's going to probably get the best score, it would be that for what he likes in pizza. And then I would probably go Brick Oven because it's close to campus, so it's right there next to the indoor practice facility. I don't know if that would score well, but since it's so close to campus, it's on campus, you probably got to go there. And then maybe a throwback, because I remember going to some coaches' shows back in the day at this place, at the shops at Riverwoods, Malawi's Pizza. I don't think that's in his wheelhouse either, so maybe don't go. But Lucy's New York Pizza in Orem, I think that's the go-to for Stool Presidente.
All right, there you go. And again, was concerned about the Salt Lake scene, but got some surprising scores. You never know. Because
he'll call it how it is. Like he's not afraid to hide his opinions, and I respect that about the guy, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. I mean, heck, BYU is no stranger these days to celebrities and influencers. I swear, every game now, there's a guy from Bachelor in Paradise, and I'm thinking, there's this TikToker, there's this guy. And then, I mean, last January they had Conor McGregor at BYU basketball game. My goodness. So BYU is no stranger to bringing out influencers and celebrities, so it should be quite the scene. The vibe should be high. And by the way, the king of Aura will be there. Ryder Lyons is going to be there, the 5-star quarterback commit. He said, see you there, Steve. And that leads in to our next segment here on the show, the stakes in this game. And I bring this up because we talk recruiting, we talk everything. It feels like this game can have an impact in so many ways on many aspects of these two programs. When BYU and Utah meet on the field in football, it's a huge game. And Saturday night, it's no different. I think it's the highest stakes game in the history of this rivalry. It's not hyperbole to me, because I feel like we are entrenched in the history of these programs, both modern day and historically. I don't point to another game that has higher stakes for both. You know, there were years where 04, 08, Utah's got a BCS Bowl on the line. Or, 2018, Utah already had the Pac-12 South lined up, and they're playing BYU just as an exhibition. Whereas BYU, they had some big games too. This one, both teams have so much on the line. They have so much on the line. Who's got more on the line, though, in this game, though? Who's got greater pressure and stakes in this game?
Yeah, this is an interesting question, Mitch. And when you propose this topic, I was surprised, because to me, there's no question who has the most pressure on them going into this game. And again, you mentioned it, the stakes, top 25 matchup, both teams ranked for the first time in this game since 2009. But beyond that, both are contending for the Big 12 title and are at the top of the conference race right now. Obviously, BYU undefeated, 3-0, Utah 2-1 with a valuable win over Arizona State. For Utah, the pressure is on them because of, first, the Big 12 standings. Getting a win over your rival, BYU, for the conference race is significant, because now you have that tiebreaker in your back pocket. You've already dropped one conference game, so BYU maybe has a little wiggle room, right? You've taken care of business so far. Utah doesn't have that luxury, so you've got that. You've got the rivalry in and of itself and what's happened the last couple games. Utah's lost the last two. I haven't won since 2019. It's been 6 years since Utah tasted victory in this rivalry. So there's that. And now Kyle Whittingham opening the press conference, asked about Bear Bachmeier, avoiding the question, avoiding the answer, and adding some gasoline to the fire. Not just fanning the flames, he's pouring gas on it. The pressure is on Utah, and frankly, have heard coaches talk about this a lot. This is a mantra that they use all the time. Pressure is a privilege, Mitch. This is a good thing for Utah. This is going to fuel them throughout the week because they know they have to go into an environment, a hostile environment down there in Provo, where they're actually favored to beat the home team. There are expectations, national expectations in Vegas that Utah is the better team, and they have to go in there and live up to them. That's got to be on the mind of players, coaches all week long, into every single practice rep, every single morning lift, every minute watching film. All of that has to fuel them this week, because when BYU is playing great football, and this is going to require a lot for them. But I think with Kyle Whittingham and how he's decided to approach this week, keeping the focus on them, I think this group and what we've learned about these players is they can handle things. They can handle tough situations. The way that they bounced back after that Texas Tech loss was really impressive to me. I think this group can handle this sort of pressure, but they have to go out and prove it. And for me, hearing them over the last couple of weeks talk about that, they need to go out and prove themselves, has been something that's been really important for Utah fans to hear, because the last couple of years they haven't lived up to the standard that they've established at Utah. And so part of that also plays into this. There is a price for a legacy, and pressure, it creeps into everything. And so for Kyle Whittingham, taking a step back and talking about him, he's in the twilight of his career. He's not going to we don't know how many more opportunities he's going to have in this game to get a win. So that even adds more to it. The pressure is all on Utah this week to go down into Provo and to get the win.
10 years ago in Las Vegas at Sam Boyd Stadium press box, Uncle Brent, he told me, never underestimate an underdog in a rivalry game. And you never want to underestimate BYU in this spot, because outside of 2019, that game that Utah last won in this rivalry, I think BYU has played very well in these rivalry games.
Agreed.
Many Kalani's teams always show up for this game. I always felt like with Bronco, BYU's teams always came intense. They always came in tight. The pressure definitely is on Utah. And they lost 2 in a row in this thing, as you noted. It's an elimination game potentially. Could be Whittingham's final year. But I think also, too, from an off-the-field perspective, this could also hold significance, this rivalry, because BYU had an offseason where they're loading up in NIL resources. They're stepping it up in football. We know basketball is one of the highest resource programs in the sport. BYU is loading up, and Utah does not want to lose any sort of ground from the on-field perspective either, and make claim that they're still the top team. So I agree with you. I think all the pressure is on Utah, but I think that sets up quite well for BYU, because they come into this game very loose. And Kalani's teams always thrive when they're an underdog and they are overlooked. And for many years, BYU has always been overlooked, and they have a chance, if they can take down Utah, to really rewrite the narrative of the physical football team that you can always rely on, that's always been the national calling card, death taxes in Utah. Maybe that could be applied to BYU if they can win this one and get their 3rd straight victory in the rivalry. It's been since the Ty Detmer era that BYU last won 3 in a row. BYU does not win very often in this rivalry. They got 2 in a row, and they're looking to get it done again. And so I agree with you. I think all the pressure definitely is on Utah. And I think Whittingham, too, his approach to the rivalry, I think that he is just fully immersed and has a respect and passion for this series. I thought it was noteworthy in his press conference when he brought up the fact that he looks at this rivalry as one of the great rivalries in the sport. Even at Big 12 Media Day, we were both there in Texas, in Frisco, and he said it's always one of the great rivalries in the sport. So it's not like he's diminishing the quality of the game. He wants to play the game now that it's a conference game. And I think that, he knows. I think you bring up a great point that it could be near the end with him being in the twilight of his career. He's sensing an opportunity. But BYU, I think, would relish the opportunity to maybe have it be his last year and send him out with an L. So this is a massive, high-stakes game, Steve, and we're going to have everyone covered on KSLSports.com.
Sure are. Looking forward to the rest of the week and the coverage that we're going to provide. We'll be back on Thursday, right, with another episode?
We're going to have another episode breaking it all down, X's and O's, the personnel, the schemes, everything you need to know about BYU and Utah. 2025 edition, all on KSLSports.com. And you got to listen to us every single day. Utah Blockcast Daily, Cougar Tracks Daily. We give you daily podcasts on video, audio form. We've got you covered better than anyone else, and it's all on KSLSports.com.